Welcome to War Bios, the podcast where we delve into the intricacies of military history's most pivotal conflicts. I'm your host, General Biography, and today we're going to explore one of the Civil War's most decisive battles, the Battle of Chickamauga. This clash of arms, fought in the rolling hills and dense forests of northern Georgia, would prove to be a turning point in the war's Western theater, showcasing the strategic brilliance and tactical innovation that defined the conflict. The Confederacy, reeling from defeats at Vicksburg and Gettysburg, sought to regain the initiative in the West. In Tennessee, Union forces under General William Rosecrans had been making steady gains, pushing deep into Confederate territory. On July 17, 1863, Rosecrans' Army of the Cumberland launched a campaign to capture the city of Chattanooga, a crucial transportation hub and gateway to the Deep South. The origins of the Battle of Chickamauga can be traced back to the early days of September 1863. As Rosecrans's forces advanced into Georgia, they were met with fierce resistance from the Confederate Army of Tennessee, led by General Braxton Bragg. The two armies had been engaging in a series of skirmishes and maneuvers, each seeking to outflank and outmaneuver the other. On September 9, 1863, Rosecrans' army crossed the Tennessee River, marking a significant milestone in the campaign. The Union Army's advance was slowed by the rugged terrain and the need to secure key roads and bridges. As the Union Army approached Chickamauga Creek, they encountered a series of Confederate defensive positions. On September 12, 1863, Rosecrans' cavalry encountered Bragg's troops near the town of Ringgold, Georgia, just a few miles south of Chickamauga. This initial clash marked the beginning of a series of skirmishes and battles that would ultimately lead to the main event, the Battle of Chickamauga. The town of Chickamauga itself was a small but strategic location, situated near the intersection of the Lafayette Road and the Alexander Bridge Road. The town's few buildings, including the Gordon Lee Mansion and the Chickamauga Methodist Church, would play a significant role in the battle that was about to unfold. As the Union Army approached, Confederate forces began to concentrate around the town, preparing for a desperate stand. With the Union Army poised to strike at the heart of Confederate territory and the Confederate Army determined to defend its homeland, the conditions are ripe for a clash of epic proportions. The Union Army, consisting of over 60,000 troops, was arrayed along the Lafayette Road, with its flanks anchored on the creek. Meanwhile, the Confederate Army, numbering around 65,000 soldiers, had concentrated its forces near the town of Ringgold, Georgia. The battle began on the morning of September 19, as Union forces launched a series of probing attacks against the Confederate lines. The fighting was intense and chaotic, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. As the day wore on, the Confederates launched a series of counterattacks, seeking to exploit weaknesses in the Union line. One notable example of the ferocity of the fighting took place near the Brotherton Cabin, where the 19th Indiana Infantry Regiment clashed with the 26th Tennessee Infantry Regiment. The two units exchanged volleys at close range, resulting in devastating losses on both sides. As the battle raged on, General Rosecrans became increasingly concerned about his army's position. He had ordered his corps commanders to concentrate their forces and prepare for a defensive stand, but the Confederates were relentless in their assault. The Union line began to waver, and by mid-afternoon it seemed as though the entire army might be overrun. However, the Union Army's resolve was bolstered by the heroic actions of individual soldiers and units. For example, the 21st Ohio Infantry Regiment, led by Colonel James Nabling, held its ground against repeated Confederate charges, buying time for the rest of the Union line to regroup and reorganize. As one soldier later recalled, "The rebels came at us with a yell, but we stood firm, firing volley after volley into their ranks. It was a terrible sight, but we held our ground, and the rebels were repelled." As the sun began to set on September 19, the battle seemed far from over. The Confederates had made significant gains, but the Union Army still held key positions along the Lafayette Road. On September 20, the Confederates launched a massive assault against the Union center, seeking to break through and capture the critical high ground near Snodgrass Hill. The fighting was fierce and intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. However, the Union Army held firm, thanks in large part to the bravery of General George Thomas, who had taken command of the Union forces after Rosecrans' departure from the battlefield. As the day drew to a close, it became clear that the Confederates had emerged victorious, having driven the Union Army back and secured control of the field. However, the cost had been high, with both sides suffering over 30,000 casualties between them. The Battle of Chickamauga was one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War, and its outcome would have far-reaching consequences for the Confederacy and the Union. The Confederate victory had given them a much-needed boost in morale and momentum, but it had also come at great cost. The Union Army, though defeated, remained intact and determined to continue the fight. As General Ulysses S. Grant later noted, "The Battle of Chickamauga was a defeat, but it was not a disaster. We had lost a battle, but we had not lost the war." The Confederate victory at Chickamauga was a significant morale boost for the South, but it came at a tremendous cost. The Confederates suffered over 16,000 casualties, including many high-ranking officers. Despite their win, they were unable to capitalize on their success as the Union Army remained intact and continued to pose a threat. In contrast, the Union Army's defeat was a sobering reality check. General William Rosecrans's Army of the Cumberland had suffered over 16,000 casualties, and his reputation as a commander was severely tarnished. The loss led to a reorganization of the Union forces in the Western Theater, with General Ulysses S. Grant eventually taking command. One of the most significant consequences of the Battle of Chickamauga was the subsequent Siege of Chattanooga. In late September 1863, Confederate forces under General Braxton Bragg laid siege to the city, hoping to capture it and split the Union Army in two. However, the Union Army, now under Grant's command, was able to hold out and eventually break the siege. The Battle of Chickamauga also marked a turning point in the war for General George Thomas, who had taken command of the Union forces during the battle. His bravery and leadership earned him the nickname, the Rock of Chickamauga, and he went on to play a crucial role in the Union's ultimate victory. In the years following the Civil War, the Battle of Chickamauga became a symbol of the brutal and devastating nature of the conflict. The battle's legacy serves as a reminder of the high cost of war and the importance of preserving our nation's history. The battle marked a shift in momentum in the Western theater, ultimately contributing to the Union's victory in the Civil War. As General Grant so eloquently put it, the Battle of Chickamauga was a defeat, but it was not a disaster. We had lost a battle, but we had not lost the war. The enduring lessons of the Battle of Chickamauga serve as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, perseverance and determination can ultimately lead to victory. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.